All right, so Luciano, once again, thank you for being on the show. It's a pleasure to have you here. Welcome.
Thanks, Kathy.
All right, we have a lot of interesting topics to talk about today. And without further ado, let's jump right in. Right now, I think you're the managing director of Cushman Wakefield.
Yes,
Can you tell us a little bit, what does that mean? What do you do exactly?
sure. So by profession, I'm a real estate broker. I've been a
Yeah.
broker for now 20 years. And over the last 3.5 years, I've been running Cushman and Wakefield here in Quebec. So my
Mm-hmm.
responsibility is the Quebec market and the Quebec geography, all service lines combined, but more specifically the brokerage service line. So, uh, typically I'm overseeing the work of our brokers who are doing um,
Mm-hmm.
transactional transaction of assets in the either retail, industrial, or office domain, either on the leasing side or on the selling side.
Okay, and how big is your team?
Our team is we're about 50 people here in the province of Quebec, and then we've got
Okay,
over 50,000 people at Cushman and Wakefield across the globe. So I always count them as part of our team
for
because
sure.
these are all people that we tap into on a regular basis for different things to either help our clients here or to help our clients across the world that want to do business in Quebec.
Mm. But at the office where you're at right now, downtown, how many are you in that particular office?
We're about 30, so we have two
30?
offices in Quebec. We have about 30 in
Okay.
Montreal downtown, and then about 20 in Ville Saint Laurent, which is our satellite office for the suburban market.
Okay, I understand. And I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit here.
Uh-oh.
Uh, what is your favorite part of this job that you're doing right now?
My favorite part, I have a lot of favorite parts, but my
Oh,
favorite
good.
part is just is meeting people, and and I'm smiling because obviously a struggle right now during this pandemic
Yes.
and the confinement that we have, and so but certainly the interesting people that I meet, both on the investor side of our business, on the occupier side of our business,
Mm-hmm.
and of course the different people that we meet just in the community. I'm always fascinated by people and their stories. Um, and so for me, I think that's my favorite part is the meeting of people. I think also my second favorite thing is helping young brokers and young professionals
Yeah.
elevate their game and help them with their training and just help them kind of get the bug for this business and help them be motivated and stay the course because it's not an easy business.
That's exactly what I was going to add. It's not easy because it's like it's a separate entity. You have to like make it happen on your own. It's like your own entrepreneur too, right?
Exactly. So our brokers are entrepreneurs and they share the common platform that I oversee. But
Mm-hmm.
I have been a broker myself and I've owned my own brokerage firm
Mm-hmm.
with partners in the past. So I absolutely know what it means to wake up every morning hungry and to wake up and know that, I need to come home with something at the end of the day or else I'm not going to get paid and I'm not going
Yeah.
so I think that's so important. I think it's so important to have that hunger and so I appreciate the fact that I'm able to impart that that training and that I guess that acquired wisdom over the years,
Yes.
share that with my team. Um, and I say junior brokers, but I also appreciate sharing with my maybe more seasoned brokers
Okay.
who who are, we're always learning from each other, and that's
For
what
sure.
I appreciate about being in a business that's very much a relationship business, very much a people business.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And what is your least favorite part of the job?
The least favorite part, I would say, whenever there's conflicts,
Okay.
because for me, I always like to see a win-win situation.
Yes.
I think I think you can't. I don't think it's feasible long term where somebody's winning and someone is losing when it comes
Mm-hmm.
to like negotiations and stuff. So I think that in this environment, I do have some issues sometimes where there is a conflict and it has to be resolved. And my way of dealing with that actually has been, and no trade secrets here, but having the two parties talk it out and work it out. And most times it does. Most times it does work out, and it works out for the best. So um, I would say that would be probably my least favorite.
That's good. So I'm sure that part of the training or the struggle, like you impart it also to the other brokers or the junior brokers that are coming up, because it's something that, of course, that they have to deal with.
Oh, yeah, oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, they're every day they're out there trying to make a living for themselves and
Yes.
trying to figure out, and they're constantly getting rejected. Actually, our business, we get more no's than yeses.
Yes.
So it's always amazing how do you make money if you're getting more no's than yeses? But of course, that's just the name. That's just the name of the game. You're gonna get 90 people saying no to you before you get 10 people saying yes to you. Um, and of those 10 people that say yes to you, only some of them are going to convert into a relationship and a transaction.
Yeah.
So
It does take a different type of mindset to be able to do this business.
for sure, I mean, it's
Yeah.
not. I mean, and I relate it to any entrepreneur. If you think of,
Yes.
I always used to say, so, that if you had a convenience store or a dépanneur, if you're running
Mm-hmm.
a dépanneur, there are certain things that you have to do for your business and make sure that you have, your store is stocked with cold beer, fresh bread and fresh milk and so on. And you're running the small business. It's the same thing for a broker. You're running a small business. If you decide that your dépanneur, you're going to close your dépanneur and sorry, not close it, but rather you're going to open your dépanneur from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m., then you're going to reap the benefits of working from 10 to 4.
Exactly.
And if you're going to be the entrepreneur that says, you know what, my dépanneur is open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and I'm ready to serve you,
Mm-hmm.
then that's a different philosophy. And so I think that that's something that I like to impart with our certainly with people coming into this business. It really is an entrepreneurship experience, and you've got to act like an entrepreneur.
And how can somebody join your team? Like, how does that happen? Is there an interview process? Do you have a say in that? And what do you look for in
Yeah.
somebody?
So on the brokerage side, I have a say in it. So what I'm looking for in a broker is somebody who has an education of like a university education
Okay.
minimum. Typically, minimum is a university education. Finance background is good.
Mm-hmm.
Marketing background is good as well. And then you also have to have obviously a license from the OSIC, which is
Of
our
course.
regulatory body here in Quebec, which allows you to do brokerage transactions.
Mm-hmm.
And so typically a lot of people that I meet out of universities don't have that accreditation. So they have to go and study for another 6 to 9 months
Okay.
and do an exam. Sometimes I meet some people that are in the process of doing their exam and getting their accreditation from the OSIC, but typically those are the kind of the two main criteria for me even before looking at a CV.
Okay. But in terms of philosophy, for example, in our company, we try to hire happy people. Like they
Right.
have to have this thing about them that says, you know what, maybe this person could be more easily trained or something like that. This attitude, positive attitude, is that something that you look for too?
Certainly love positive attitudes. If you don't have a positive attitude in this business, you're not going to last very long because you've got to be,
True.
I mean, think about right now when I like to say the apocalypse of the grocery store run for toilet paper on March 12th in Quebec, you know, everything looked like it was going to be a disaster, right? So
Yes.
so if you're not positive and you don't have a positive outlook on life, it's going to be very, very challenging to be in business. Forget
Yes, for
real
sure.
estate.
Mm-hmm.
To be an entrepreneur, it's going to be very difficult, especially if, like I said, if you're getting 90 no's out of 100, 90 people telling you no all the time, it gets discouraging. So if you
Yeah.
don't have a positive outlook, the other thing I look for in people that want to join us is a trustworthiness. And I know
Okay.
that's not always easy. It's not always easy to test for, and it's not easy to tell. But I look at the CV and I kind of try to understand the pattern. And for me, looking at CV, it says gives us a snapshot of what the person has done in the past. But I always like to get into the details of what they did, what they enjoyed, what they didn't enjoy, in their career. So,
Mm-hmm.
or at least, well, when it's junior brokers, of course, it's mostly summer jobs that you're looking at. So, but I always like to understand, how they got the jobs, what they were doing, what they learned. But for me, trustworthiness is the big one. You have to be able to trust the brokers, the people that we're hiring, because um, our clients are in their hands, our brand is in their hands, and that's so
Mm-hmm.
important. And really, did you ever do business with somebody you didn't trust?
Of
Maybe.
course not.
It was the first and last time you did it. So,
Exactly.
so you want to do business with people you trust, and so for me, that's primordial, as they say in French. It's top priority.
Tout à fait. All right. Now we're gonna go back a few decades. All right.
Oh, okay.
Who was Luciano in high school? How would you describe yourself?
Well, I would say I was very extroverted.
Ah,
I was a class representative in grade 7 in secondary 1.
impressive.
I was one of the first things I did in high school when I walked into my high school is I realized there was no recycling program. And back in the day, around I'll just say the mid 80s, okay, or
Yeah.
late 80s, when I started high school, there was no recycling program in the high school, and I approached the principal and I said, look, we need to have a recycling program, and I'll take care of it. So I basically wrote a contract with a company that would come and pick up our used paper, and I would collect it every week.
How
And
old were you?
I was, I guess, 13. I started in grade 6 in my elementary school, and
Mm-hmm.
then I brought the idea to my high school. So I was, I don't know, 12, 13, I guess, whatever it is in secondary 1. And so we cut a contract with a company that could come and pick up this used paper. Back then, there was no organized recycling
Recycling. Yes.
in buildings the way you see it today. And we had to, so, and I also, basically went against all odds. And when I say against all odds for a 13-year-old, right, it was like, when you think of like the barriers that exist in trying to pick up used paper in a
Mm-hmm.
school, you have a janitor who's unionized, you have this whole system that didn't exist. And so we started this, and I was recognized by the school for this. But and then later on, it became popular, and it became municipal responsibility, and so on. And so not because of me, but just I think it was just the times we were there as a
Okay.
society.
Okay.
We were there.
Ready
Um,
for it. Yeah.
yeah, so I'm particularly proud of that because it's a story that I don't always talk about. I mean, it was a long time ago. It was over.
But it is impressive, that you took the. But when you say we, like, did you create like a little? I don't know.
No, it
Other
was me. It was me
just you.
actually. It was me
Okay.
at the risk of my friends teasing me and being seen as like a bit of a garbage collector. But for me, that was like someone's garbage is someone else's gold, and there was at the time there was some value in paper and recycled paper because it would obviously you'd sell it to a mill and they would recycle
Yes.
it, right?
Yeah.
And then the paper market went down completely, and there was no value in that, which is why a lot of companies weren't doing recycling because unless the
Mhm.
municipality was involved, the fluctuation in the paper market was such that it didn't make sense for you to recycle. So
Okay. But that's very impressive. So it seems like since you were young, you had this driven mentality or taking the lead into accomplishing something.
yeah, I mean, look, we can do two things in life, right? We can
Mhm.
sit there and complain about something,
Yes. Mm-hmm.
or we can sit there and analyze what the situation is and then do something about it. And I'm more of the person that needs to do something about it. And oftentimes I get myself in trouble because sometimes I will maybe take on more than I can handle. But at the end of the day, I think if you know it's the right thing, then you end up getting it done. And for me, I've always been driven to make change, whether small or big. Yeah, I'm always looking to kind of how do we do things better. For me, in that particular situation, it didn't make sense that we were throwing away all this paper, and there was money in it. So I saw it also from like I'm looking at it from the right perspective, not
Yeah.
not an environmental perspective, absolutely, but I always think that you can make money
Monetary
from
perspective, yes.
from a monetary perspective. So that's where that's I mean that's my mo. That's my mo. And then I became class president or school president in secondary five. So throughout my high school career, I
Mm.
was um, I was very involved in student politics. I was very involved in after school curricular activities, and um, and I was generally a good student. I excelled in school, not all subjects, but I excelled in school, and I always find it ironic that people that don't like school end up staying there the longest. But anyway, it's um, it's certainly something that I find. But you know, so and then through through CEGEP and through university also, I tried to stay involved as much as possible. University was a little tougher, but I'm involved. I'm very involved now actually with the McGill alumni. So when I
Yes, I saw
graduated
that.
from McGill, yeah. So I'm very. I'm look for me. It's about giving back to our community, giving back, making a difference in our community, and we're the ones that can make a difference. It's
Yeah,
not going
of
to be.
course, of course. But did you
So
find
that's
that was there? Sorry to cut you off, but was there a was it your parents, your mom or your dad that had this that instilled that in you, or
my mom. My
your
mom
mom?
is extremely driven. I think you cannot walk down any street in Montreal where somebody doesn't know my mom. And my mom is not, uh, you know, a politician or a known business person, but she
Mm-hmm.
just has met so many people over the years.
Okay.
And she was in the direct sales business. So a bit like, you know, Tupperware or Avon. It was a
Oh
company
yeah,
out of
yeah, yeah. Okay.
There's a company out of Kitchener Waterloo. It was called Coppercraft, and they would sell copper housewares. And my mom was selling these in home demonstrations at night, and she would. This was her business, and it became so successful for her that she left her day job to do this full time, and she had a team of 30 people
Wow.
selling this housewares by demonstration. Um, so she was very successful, and I saw that. And I grew up with that. She would take me sometimes to her demonstrations. So, you know, learning how to public speak and learning how to be in front of crowds. Like I'm telling you, if you'd met my mom, you'd be like, she's just a dynamite, and I appreciate and I'm grateful for having a mom like that, and a dad too who's a lot more conservative, very risk adverse, um, but it's still two people that were there for me and made sure that I had not everything. I was gonna say everything I needed, but not everything I wanted. But I think that's a good thing. I think that's a good thing. And both immigrant parents from they came over from Italy, met here and got married here, and then had had my sister and I, and but just taught us how to work hard and just be grateful. So
I'm always impressed the impact parents can have on their kids, and when after they grow up, it's impressive. Look what, like how your mom, the drive that she had, how she transmit that to you. Uh,
yeah, she's
very
very
impressive.
she's very driven, and that drive, I think I got that drive from her, and she continues to be driven today. I mean,
Of course. It's not something that you lose. I think
no, you
it
don't know exactly.
it's
It's
part of
continued.
you. Yeah,
And you know what? And that's another point, Kathy. I think another thing I look for when we're talking to potential employees is that drive factor. That I like to call it the eye of the tiger. You know, the
the eye
reference
of the
to the
tiger.
Rocky movie of the 1970s. It's the eye of the tiger of wanting to go out there and just getting it done. You know, just do it as Nike says, or
Yeah.
make it happen. You know.
Yeah, for sure. I totally agree with that. That's one of my philosophy too. Let's see what other question I had. Okay, yes. But I look at your CV, I look at your LinkedIn profile. It seems like you're a very busy man. There's no doubt about that. So how do you juggle life balance? I mean, your personal life aspect. There's the philanthropy that you do. You're very involved in the community and also work. How do you keep it all together?
Yeah, look, I think I'm not. There are some days that I think that it's overwhelming. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not gonna lie about it. I think that there's some days where I don't even know where I am or where I need to be, and
Yeah.
so there's gonna be some things where I'll miss or they'll fall through the cracks. So I'm very cognizant of that. But I think it's just, and I think you'd have to ask my children, maybe not now, but later on in life, if if they see me as somebody who has balanced his life and his work. But I try the best to be. One of the rules I've given myself is Friday night to Sunday night, I'm home.
Okay.
Which means if ever there's an event on a Saturday night or on a Sunday night or even on a Friday night, then it's got to involve my family,
Mm-hmm.
or else or else I'm not there. And I think people understand that and appreciate that.
For
You'll see
sure.
me at an event 4 nights a week. Now, this pandemic, I think, has taught me also how my agenda had gone from, let's say 6 to 7 events per day to zero,
Wow.
right? Well, now Zoom calls, but so I think that there's a way of there's a way of balancing. There are days though that I'll admit that probably I'm too all over the place. But you know what? When I start realizing that,
Mm-hmm.
it's when I reassess. And I typically do this twice a year. I typically reassess during the holidays break in
Okay.
winter, and during the summer vacations, where I look at my calendar and I say, okay, what is it that's where is it that I'm making a difference, and where is it that I'm not making a difference, and where have I lost the passion, and where have I lost the drive, and where
Okay.
am I still passionate about what am I? And so I've left organizations not because they're bad or not because I didn't agree with like it happened that just I wasn't passionate anymore. I didn't have or I felt like I did everything I could. So I did everything
Mm-hmm.
I could. So it's time to move on and it's time to give this place to somebody else. And so you'll see that there's an evolution in my parcours or in my cheminement, as they say in French. Like
Mm-hmm.
you'll see that I've moved to other things and other interests, and we evolve as people.
Yes, of course. It keeps life interesting.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Well, for me personally, I don't think there's such a thing as like you can have a balance in everything. I think the concept of having a life balance is it's blown out of proportion because especially when you have kids, I don't know. It's very complicated. I
hard
believe.
to hard to be balanced all the time. I think
Yeah.
that's what it comes down
Yes.
to. But
Mm-hmm.
we as busy people, we as driven people, I think we need to rejig that every once in a while. And like I like to do it officially twice a year, and
Mm-hmm.
of course you think about it every day when you're trying to do stuff.
That's
So
very good what you do there. You had the reassessment there and see where you're at, and
yeah,
I think that's a very good tool. Yes, for sure. Um, we can move on a little bit to the real estate market because
sure.
that's your main domain there. What have you noticed because of COVID? What's the current situation right now with the office space?
So in office space, so it's interesting because if we look at it from a tenant perspective, from a lease, so somebody who has a lease, I've
Mm-hmm.
always said that a lease has a beginning, a middle, and an end. So those tenants that their lease is up, their leases come to expiry, those tenants are looking at the market right now and they're trying to reassess what their needs are.
Yeah.
Some of those tenants are saying, I don't know where this is going to take us. I don't know what the post confinement world is going to look like with COVID still out there and not a vaccine. So I'm probably just going to renew my lease for the next 6 months or a year as a temporary hold and as a wait and see pattern before we do any drastic changes. What we are seeing from companies that are like at the middle of their lease is that they're saying, well, you know what, maybe we need to sublease some of our space. Maybe
Okay.
we need to maybe get more space because with the social distancing measures in place, we'll need more space. Some companies are saying we'll have 75% of our workforce still work from home until further notice, and we're going to try a slow reentry.
Okay.
So that's what we're seeing on the office side. Those that are at the beginning of a lease, I think they're in the same kind of predicament. They're just trying to figure out what their next moves are. So the people that are tenants that are the best suited right now are the ones that their lease is up.
Yeah.
They have that flexibility if they choose to go on a new kind of workplace strategy um, that that maybe might suit their business.
But when you go into a new lease, let's say I'm a new tenant, is that something once you sign, that's not something you can renegotiate, right?
So in life, everything's negotiable. But typically if you've just come off of signing a lease,
Hmm.
chances are that you'll have to live with that lease, and the two parties that signed
Yeah.
the lease are going to have to live with it. But I would never say no to a client, either on the investor side or on the tenant side, to relook at and re-examine a lease. I mean, this is what we're seeing now, especially on the retail side. A lot of companies, because some of their landlords are saying, "Don't come and talk to me with your lease," right? What they're saying is, "Okay, fine. We're going to go and do bankruptcy protection, and that'll force you to talk to us about our lease." And so that's what they're doing on the retail side, is they're forcing the hand of the landlords to say, "We need to talk. We need to negotiate."
Yeah.
I think most landlords on the office side will probably be willing to at least listen, and certainly if a broker is involved, I think help in that process, because we need each other.
Yes.
Tenant needs the landlord needs the tenant, so they need each other. And as a landlord, I don't think you wake up in the morning and say, "Oh, I can't wait to get rid of this tenant, and I want to foreclose on their space, and and kick them out." Like, the landlord wants to get paid rent. They're in
Of
the business
course.
of leasing square footage. And tenants, I think, don't wake up in the morning thinking like, I want to get out of this situation. Obviously, willfully. I mean, of course, it,
Hmm.
it happens. We're in a situation right now where some businesses just won't make it,
Okay.
and they're not going to make it through this pandemic. So it's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out. But on the office side, I'm confident that short and medium term, I think we're going to see some changes. Long term, I think people want to be with people.
Yeah.
And right now, this working from home works because we are all home. We're all home. We're all Zooming. We're all, working from home and working on our setup at home. But long term, I think that as people start to go back
Hmm.
into the office space, there's going to be the haves and the have nots. The haves are going to be the ones in the office that are going to be kind of getting behind the company culture, getting behind the team building, and so on. And those that are working from home, I think, will feel disconnected with what
Okay.
goes on at work. I mean, I don't know. I just think of anecdotally, like, if there was somebody in this office right now and they were here, and I would say to them, why don't, it's 5 o'clock, why don't we go grab a beer somewhere and just talk about life? If you're working from home, I will never come to approach you and say, why don't we, have a beer? It's got to be planned. Hey,
Mm.
Kathy, come in next week at 5 o'clock and have a beer. So those impromptu meetings that encourage relationships and build relationships
Yeah.
are not going to happen if we're all home.
Yeah, you're
Uh,
definitely right. It's true. It's true.
so I, 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 I believe in the human spirit. One of my friends had said once, he says, um, we all have kitchens at home, but people still go to the restaurant. So, um, and we had a study. Cushman Wakefield did a study of millennials and Gen Zs,
Hmm.
amongst others, but they are the ones that are enjoying working from home the least.
Oh, really?
Yes, and I was a surprise. I mean, we were surprised because we think that this is a generation that's plugged in and they've got their
Yeah.
phone and everything is organized and ready to go. They're the ones that are having the hardest time, um, because they need that connection. They need the human connection.
Yeah.
So
So what you're saying is that in the short term, yes, maybe those people working from home and with the office space is going to have an impact, but long term, let's not get ourselves tricked. It will go.
well, I think that long term is going to be a hybrid. So I
Yeah.
think that 5-day work week in a physical place called the office,
Hmm.
I think is gonna be what was happening before. We just didn't record it, which is, the person would come into our office and say, yeah, tomorrow I'm going to be working from home.
Okay.
And you knew that what was really going on was that, the cable company was coming in to make an installation, or the furniture was being delivered, or something was happening at home that they couldn't be in the office.
Mm-hmm.
I think now it's just going to be acceptable that, you know, 1 or 2 days a week somebody wants to be flexible and remain flexible. I think it'll happen, and I think that's not, you know, it's not a bad thing. I think it's just, it's
Yeah.
we evolve as a society. So, but I don't, when I hear things like the office space is dead, like, that's a little alarmist, and I don't think that's the case.
Okay. Because my next question I was going to ask you is, will investors, will they try to diverge their portfolio more into the industrial side? But from what you're saying, it's maybe
So, I mean, a lot of the bigger REITs and property owners in Quebec and certainly across the country
mhm.
own various asset classes.
Yes.
So they have a sprinkling of different assets, and I think that right now what we're seeing is the industrial class is probably going to be the one that's going to survive the best
Yes.
out of this confinement, because of e-commerce fulfillment, because of, you know, logistics and distribution, and you know, all of those things that are served out of an industrial space. I think of, I don't know if you were ordering groceries online during the pandemic, but or during the confinement. I don't know if you were going in person or you were
My
ordering.
husband went.
He went. Okay, good. Because I can tell you that we tried it once in our home, and I think one time I had to wait like 9 days for my order.
Yeah, that was it. Yeah.
It's very hard to wait 9 days for food, especially if your fridge is empty. And now, are retailers, and are they going to perfect that? I think so, because once I did make my way back into the store, I realized that these orders were being fulfilled by basically, you know, staff that was running around the grocery store filling the order.
Hmm.
That is, I can't imagine that that's the most efficient way to do that fulfillment of the order. So no wonder the orders took forever. And as one
Hmm.
of my friends jokingly said, those people that were filling the orders never did groceries for themselves. So, you know,
The
but
rotten bananas.
exactly. Well, and you know, and to your point, Kathy, the rotten bananas actually is what makes retail, what makes grocery retail struggle the most, is trying to get you the perfect banana or the perfect tomato on time to your home without, you know, without it rotting, and that's the struggle.
Yeah.
Most of these grocery stores, but they'll figure it out. But they're going to need industrial real estate to help them figure that out, and they're going to need some retail real estate to help them figure that out as well, because the
Yeah.
fulfillment may have, you know, we may see grocery stores that the grocery store in the front is not so big, but the back end of the grocery store will have like a fulfillment, so that these neighborhood grocery stores can be closer to your home. You're not getting rotten bananas, and you're getting it
Yeah.
quicker, that it's not coming from one location.
Yeah. I think this with this whole pandemic, a lot of people, a lot of businesses will restructure or have a different view on how to do business, in the long term moving forward.
I think so, and technology is going to play a big part. And
Mm-hmm.
for those of your listeners who are in the Montreal area and in the Quebec area, we've invested a lot of time and effort and money in attracting AI companies to Quebec. And I think AI is going to play a big role in a lot of different things. We think of, you know, what's the biggest challenge right now in the office buildings? It's not so much the office space is certainly one of them. So you have to reduce the number of people that are in on the actual floor of the office. But
Yeah.
the other big thing is the elevators. You don't want to be
Yes.
touching buttons. You don't want to be touching doors. You don't want to be, so if there is a predictive element to your card, your pass card. So if we programmed my pass card into the building that told the elevator computer saying Luciano D'Iorio goes up to this floor, and that's the only floor you're gonna let him on.
Mm-hmm.
So I basically don't even have to scan the card. I don't have to touch anything. It'll just be in my pocket. As I walk
Okay.
to the elevator lobby, the elevator will open up and then close the doors and bring me up to the floor I need to go to. So AI, I think, is going to be important.
For sure.
Cash registers, self checkouts, so more of that, less manipulation of things.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Well, just Amazon with the whole food that they have in the States, that same concept also, walk in and walk out. I haven't
Exactly.
seen it here though. I don't know if it exists in Canada.
No, I haven't seen it here, but I've been meaning to go and have a look at it, because obviously very very curious about the concept, and but to me that it makes a lot of sense, and it certainly reduces the time spent in the store,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah. But you mean going to look at it, so you do want to go see how it's done.
Oh yeah, I would like to. Yeah, once we get to travel again, I don't know when that's going to be, but once we get to travel, I'm always curious. Whatever city I visit,
Hmm.
I try to because I have the real estate lens all the time.
Yes.
That's the problem with this business, right? Because you're always thinking about our business. It's not
Yeah.
something that you go home or you punch out and like. I'm always thinking about. I'm driving by and oftentimes my head I'll get whiplash because looking at a new property for lease or for sale or some new project that's coming up. We're just naturally curious in our business. So
Yeah. So that's the way to go. That means that you're very detail oriented when it comes to the business. Yes, it's never
uh,
turned off.
absolutely. And to get back to your point about CVs, what I look for in a CV, if there is one spelling mistake, I will not look at the rest of the CV. I promise. And that's a message that I really do want to send out there because I think people don't. I think over the years, I think people have disregarded that, but it's so important that that piece of paper speaks to you and where you've been in your life, and you're trying to sell yourself, and if there's a spelling mistake, it means that you haven't taken the time to be detailed,
Yeah,
and
detail.
details are very important.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. A picture, would that help if somebody put their picture there, or not really?
No, I don't think so.
No.
And I read a book, Malcolm Gladwell, who talks about actually he goes totally against what I think, but which is he says we actually shouldn't be able to see people because we'll make better decisions if we don't see their face, and we'll make better decisions. So he looked at the U.S. presidents and he said that if they just gave a code to each candidate, uh, it would be different. People would elect different people than what they see in person. So I found that interesting.
It's true.
I'm not going to pretend to like reanalyze his work, but I thought that was it's interesting in terms of the visual. I'm a visual person. I need to see people, but I don't think on a CV. I think it's probably better that we don't have.
Okay. Well, I'm sure the people that are listening, if they want to apply with you, they know they have to read that CV 50 times to make sure.
Make sure there's no spelling mistakes, please.
Especially if it's in French, all the accent aigu.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. And but it's the detail because in our business, a comma that's put in the wrong place in an offer to lease clause could cost millions of dollars to our clients.
Yes.
And so if you don't care enough to have a detailed, a properly vetted CV, then I have a hard time thinking that it's going to be that for our clients, and
I
that's
agree with you. I agree with you.
I'm tough. I'm sorry, but certain things I feel like it's just par for the course.
Yes, for sure, for sure, for sure. Everybody has their things. In January in 2020, you did an interview. You were on the show Elias Matas. You did
Yes.
the interview with him there on real estate, and then you talked about 5 buildings that were traded in order to increase the value of the properties. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So in January, Elias and I spoke about different office buildings that were traded, and they had gone for like record prices.
Mm-hmm.
The demand for investment properties in Montreal has gone up. I think a lot of that has to do with just lack of good, solid investments across the board. I
Mm-hmm.
think a lot of people from out of province are coming and looking at Quebec as an option. Quebec is seen as a relatively undervalued, safe
Yeah.
haven for money. Right? Money follows safety and follows and wants to follow growth, and people believe that Montreal is a growth city, and we've seen it in our statistics in terms of office vacancy. We've seen it in our just in general our employment statistics. Also, we were pretty much almost at full employment in Quebec before this pandemic. So We were so it's just good news, and these buildings that traded back at the end of last year and the beginning of this year are all office towers in the financial core,
Mm-hmm.
and they were all offices that basically that the investors have paid top dollar for them, with the belief that these are going to be they're long-term investments and long-term plays.
Okay, so I remember you mentioned in the interview that it's basically selling those buildings to other investors, and then they
Yeah,
hold on to them.
yeah,
Okay. So if I go back to the previous conversation, well, the conversation we're having now, but earlier, okay, maybe right now, because I know the value of the buildings is determined by the ratio of occupancy.
right.
So let's say it goes down in the short term, but in the long term, the investors, I'm sure they're thinking downtown, it's a gold mine. There is no way that it's gonna tank. Not even COVID can affect that.
Well, I think that there's going to be. I think that the valuations on buildings are certainly going to change over the short and medium
Hmm.
term. Um, I believe that real estate is all location, 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 right?
Yes.
And I learned that in secondary one, grade 7 geography, where location, location, location was very important. And I think that's if you have an asset that's well positioned in a good part of the geography that you're in, I think that there's no, you can't lose out. I think that there's still a sense that we want to be in a downtown core, and you want to be close to the action. Look, this pandemic is obviously is rewriting some of our rules that we know as normal,
Hmm.
right?
Yes.
Normal is not normal. But I believe in long term. I think that anybody who's invested in these properties and they have the financial wherewithal to hold on to them, I think that they're going to be good assets to keep.
Well said. I don't know if you wanted to add anything else on the real estate part and COVID. Any
No, I
last
think look,
words?
I think on the retail side, I think we're going to see some changes there. I think we were seeing some changes prior to COVID. The apparel businesses, especially, were hurting. Unfortunately, a lot of those businesses are headquartered in Montreal
Hmm.
on the Canadian side of things. So I think that there's going to be some shifting there. Um, Retail, I think you're going to see probably retail centers are going to be more mixed use properties. So you'll have um, you'll have like some apparel businesses. You'll have experiential retailers. Like an axe. What do you call it? There's those axe throwing places, or the escape rooms, or stuff. Stuff that's going to drive people in once we're allowed to congregate.
Yeah,
And then you're
because
going to have a mix of residential on the same sites,
okay.
and people wanting to be close to the retail experience, and be part of that. So I think that'd be my comment on the retail side. Industrial and office, I think we've touched on those. So um, that's what I would say.
Thank you for adding the part about the retail there. All right, so now we can move on into your involvement in the community and your philanthropist activities. And the article that was written about you, it described you as a philanthropist at heart. I mean, that's a really deep description, I find. And I see that you're part of many foundations, and many of them you're on their board of directors. And there was one note in particular that struck me. It's because I'm a mother, so I understand, it affected me a little bit. It's the Tinus Survivors Neonatal Fundraiser.
Yes,
Can you tell us what event prompted you to create such a beautiful thing?
sure. So my son was born. So we have two boys. My
Okay.
second son was born in 2008, extremely premature. He was born at 24 weeks,
Oh, wow.
24 weeks and 5 days gestational. So typically 40 weeks. You have two children, so like so. Um, and so he came very, very prematurely, and he was born at the Royal Vic Hospital back when it was on the mountain.
Okay.
we were at the neonatal section, and I felt that, one of the things was there was a lack of rocking chairs. There was a point where we were able to hold our son, and we wanted to rock him. We want to touch him and rock him, and we were able to
Yes.
do that because you're not able to do that right away when he's born because he's on a bunch of tubes and all kinds of things. And so um, I said, this doesn't make sense. Like, it's one of those doesn't make sense moments, right? Like, just
Yeah.
like I had in high school. And it was, why is there not enough rocking chairs? They want us to rock our baby, but there's not enough rocking chairs. Now we're fighting for rocking chairs. So I said, you know what? I'm gonna try to raise some money for rocking chairs. And I got in touch with a family who had their child 10 years before at the Royal Vic, and they were looking for a way to give back. And
Okay.
they hadn't really, you get busy in life and you're trying to raise a kid, and especially a child that is premature. There's a lot of complications at the beginning. So
Yeah.
we ended up meeting, we ended up talking about doing a fundraiser. They were on board right away. She ended up bringing on another family with us. So we
Okay.
were three families in the end that had our first fundraiser. And our intention was to raise like $15,000. And
Okay.
we wanted to do a very no frills fundraiser. Come and have a cocktail drink, come and have some hors d'oeuvres. And basically the more money that goes to the hospital, the better.
Yeah.
But we wanted to raise $15,000. We ended up raising almost $50,000 that year.
Wow.
And people were very touched by our story. I mean, my son was on oxygen for almost a year from when his birth.
Really.
So that was certainly something. And we also, he almost died 1 month after his birth. So we really wanted to find a way to thank the hospital. We knew that they were doing miracles every single day in that department, and we knew that they were under resourced. So since then, we've been organizing this on and off for almost 10 years. It'll be our 10th year
Mm.
this year. Now, of course, because of social distancing, we won't be doing an event, but we're looking at doing a virtual fundraiser or some sort of basically a campaign. And I
Yeah.
don't know if my committee is going to be upset of me revealing this, but I think what we're looking for is we're going to write a letter to all of our donors in the past and our future donors and say, look, you know what, this year we're not having an event. And we know that people are not, some people have lost their jobs and some people are just not in the financial capabilities that they were in the past years. But if you'd like to give whatever you'd like to give, but feel free to give to the hospital. And if you cannot give, then don't worry about it. Let's see each other next year, and hopefully next year things will be better. So
Yeah.
so that's where we are with fundraising for the hospital. But we're very proud because we've made a difference there in terms
Yes.
of training for the nurses and staff, in terms of equipment, some of the equipment that we bought.
Hmm.
So we did, training, which is important. We always forget, like, training is so important, and there's not enough investment in training. Um, Equipment that we have a room that was named after Tiny Survivors. It's a room that is a simulation room, and it's actually now being used for COVID cases as well, like for COVID training. So
Hmm.
it's actually I'm very proud of that. So if you go to the Montreal Children's Hospital, you will see a sign over this simulation room that's dedicated to tiny survivors, petits survivants. So we're very proud of
For sure. How did you come up with the name?
that. My wife and I think we were throwing around some names, and I think with the committee, I think we just said, you know what, they're tiny survivors. They're little survivors. So,
Yeah.
and it stuck.
I think it's really good. It has a ring to it. It's really nice. It's a really nice name. Well, that's a very touchy story. But how did you know? So you made that decision right then and there. You can't find a rocking chair, and you said, you know what? I'm gonna do something about
Yeah, that's my MO. You know what?
it.
You got to figure it out. Because no one's going to figure it out for you. And I
Yes.
think that's a message to your listeners who are, entrepreneurs. Look, entrepreneurship comes from fulfilling a need. There's a need, and you have to ask yourself the question, why wasn't it done? And why isn't it being done? And a lot of times we'll get 1,000 excuses why it's not done. But
Hmm.
you have to find just that one way to get it done. So for me, I think it was just like, doesn't make sense. We're going to do something about it. And today we're, 10 years in, and we've raised, I don't know, $500,000, I think it is. So all from a little idea of a rocking chair.
I know, because I was reading somewhere it says that for entrepreneurs, it's best you make decisions when the idea and the feelings, the emotions is there. Because if you say, okay, yes, it's a good idea, but let me think about it some more. And then as the months and days go by, that emotion, that strong emotion you had, it's faded. Then next thing
Yeah.
you know, nothing happened, you know?
It's interesting. I used to be involved with a group called Youth Employment Services, and I'm still formally involved with them today. And their mission is to help young entrepreneurs start businesses, and they also help Montrealers, find careers and find jobs. And I would do these like um, courses and these sessions about real estate, but I'd always talk about sort of like, you know, kind of the drive of the entrepreneurship drive. And it was always interesting. I would ask the class, what's your idea? And a lot of people were like, I don't want to tell you, it's a secret. Yeah, I don't want somebody to take my idea. And I always found that interesting. I'm like, look, trust me, there's a lot of ideas out there. People don't follow through with them. You've got to follow through. And that, to your point, Kathy, like, when you have an idea and you believe in it in your heart of hearts, you gotta go for it. You
Yeah.
gotta go for it.
Yeah. Because it starts right here first. You have to imagine what could it be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're crazy. Sometimes the ideas are crazy for sure. But you gotta think it through and see it through and see and test it. But you have to be careful on who you get advice from,
Yes.
because there's a lot of advice that we get from people they're not in a position to give advice. And instead of not giving advice, they actually give you advice, which is terrible. They should just say, I'm not in a position to give you the advice, because
No
um,
humility whatsoever to say no.
yeah, I actually appreciate that about my dad. My dad will often say, like, I'm not in a position to give you advice. And I rather that than somebody being negative. No, Kathy, you can't do podcasts. You can't do podcasts, or you can't do real estate. How are you going to make money in real estate? Or, so,
Yeah.
um,
No, but because we share that same mentality. Because when I started the podcast, I said, you know what, this is something I actually want to do. And then the emotion was strong. And I said, you know what, let me just approach people. I didn't even have anything yet. I had no equipment, nothing. And I said, oh, do you want to be on my show? And the first person I asked, the person said, yes. I was like, oh, okay, I guess I have a podcast after all then. And then that's how it started.
you
So
just
yeah.
have to ask the question, right? Life is about
Yes.
negotiating, right? It's about negotiating. I could have said no. The first person that you interviewed could have said no.
Yes. Yes.
It just becomes, and then if you're passionate about something, it'll shine.
Yeah.
And I think that's my message to entrepreneurs, is that you have to be passionate about it, and
Mhm.
you've got to work smart, and you've got to work hard for sure. I don't think like work and working hard doesn't get you just as no matter how old you are, no matter how long you've been in business, you got to continue working hard,
Mhm.
but you got to work smart. And the smart, I think, comes with age, or just at least not so much age, but just the time that you dedicate to a certain thing, to a certain
Oh, good
profession.
advice. Oh, good advice. Yeah, that can help.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's my 2 cents on entrepreneurship.
That's your final message for them there.
My final message for entrepreneurs out there listening, for sure.
And a question I had is, how many foundations are you involved in today?
So I'm involved with the Montreal Children's Hospital Foundation, which oversees the tiny survivors.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm involved I sit on the board of my local Desjardins, Caisse Desjardins,
Okay.
out on Mercier Est, Anjou. I sit on the Governor General's Canadian Leadership Conference Foundation, which is something I've been involved with since 2012. Um, so that's sort of what keeps me busy,
Yeah.
and then of course the McGill Alumni Association. So I'm vice president there right
Yeah.
now with the McGill Alumni, and very proud to. We have 275,000 alumni across the world. So very proud of that.
Yeah, it's a huge community there. Right?
Yes.
And if somebody wants to reach out to you, where can they find you?
So I'm on LinkedIn, just my name on LinkedIn. Then I also have an Instagram page.
Okay.
I also have Facebook. I guess email is probably the best. So it's Luciano.D'Iorio without the apostrophe. So Diorio at cushwake.com.
I'll put that in the link when we edit the video for sure.
Awesome. Thank you.
And I think now this is my final question. Hopefully, what's next for you? Maybe next, I don't know, 5 years or so.
Wow, that is a good question. You know what? I think that I have a lot of work to do here. I think
Mm-hmm.
that there's a lot of building to do in this company. I think the opportunity to in this market in Montreal right now. Montreal is on fire, and
Yeah.
I think that there's still some room for growing different service lines. So I
Okay.
want to see that. I want to see that through. I want to maybe scale back on a couple of my commitments on the
Okay.
philanthropic side
Mm-hmm.
and kind of readjust. And also see my kids through their teen years. They're becoming teenagers now.
Yeah.
You know, helping my kids through that time. I think that's an important time for parents
Yeah.
to be around. And then just for myself, I think if I can get a half marathon under my belt, that'd be fun to do. It'd just be a fun thing to do. Is just to get some long distance running once we can all run together again.
Well, this seems like very nice goals for the future.
Thank you. Yes.
So it was a pleasure to have you on the show, and who knows, maybe you'll come back another time.
Thanks, Kathy. Appreciate it. Really, really appreciate the invite.